Hello there, I'm Richard Harnetty of Harnetty Railways. I am Richard Harnetty, your host, and welcome to the first and only Q&A session of Harnetty Railways. I'd like to thank everyone on YouTube who have put forward their questions and my group members on Facebook who have put forward their questions. I'm extremely grateful to you all in making this Q&A session possible. Let's get on with the first question, shall we? Right, first question is from Steam on Screens on YouTube, and he asked me two questions. And the first question he asked me, when did you first fall in love with railways? Well, that is a very long story, that, because I've been brought up into the railways from a very, very young age. Even before I turned 3, actually. Thanks to my late uncle, he was an ex-employee for British Railways back in the 1950s and the 1960s, working in the permanent way department from his base at Edge Hill in Liverpool, and working on the Liverpool and Manchester Railway part, and also part of the electronicing devices, particularly when the electronical signals were coming into force. Every Sunday we always watch railway videos together, and it wasn't until when I was about 3 when we started visiting preserve railways with me household, and particularly visiting like Keighley-Worth Valley, the Emsby and Bolton Abbey Railway when I was a lot younger, and then started with East Lancs Railway in the late 90s, and that's how I started growing up into the railways, and then I've seen a lot more as time went on. So thank you very much, Steam on Screens, for the first question you gave me. The second one is, what is one of the best memories you have had of a day outing regarding railways? Well, that is another difficult question because there have been loads. Particularly, like, I've been out on the main line and also been on preserve railways. But probably the most memorable moments I've had was the footplate rides I've had. Particularly, I've been on the footplate of many great engines over the years, including Flying Scotsman. But probably the best footplate ride I've ever had was on the North Yorkshire Moors Railway, when back in October 2019, for my 30th birthday, I had the footplate ride on Nell Pegg's K1 62005, and in the weather conditions, which was a bit poor to be honest because of the rain, and with the load the K1 had, which was 7 coaches at the time, it was reminding you that you're in the Scottish Highlands, just like how the K1 is when working in Scotland for West Coast Railways on the Jacobite. So I've got to say, my footplate experience on the K1 has got to be one of the highlights I've had in my lifetime. Thank you very much, Steam on Screens on YouTube, for passing me on your two questions. Right, next question comes from Repton926 MYMR, and he asked me, what is your favourite MYMR steam loco and why? Well, that is a difficult question because I've seen a good variety of motive power on the North Yorkshire Moors over the years, since 2006, when I first visited the MYMR with steam trains running. I mean, I've seen a variety of standard, from tank engines to the heavy express passenger locomotives, and within that, mixed traffic and heavy goods engines. But to me, and it is a difficult choice for me, what's the best MYMR steam loco in the fleet that the MYMR owns? Well, it has to be this loco here. Of course, this polo shirt will give it away. The Resident Black 5 5428 Eric Tracy. Now that engine has a close personal connection in my heart, as not only I've seen good variety of action of that loco over the years, but also when I was a working volunteer at the North Yorkshire Moors Railway for a time, and Eric Tracy was my personal favourite to work on. I like cleaning, the maintenance work, even the time as a volunteer cleaner, training up as a fireman. And Eric Tracy was such an easy locomotive to work on, and I got used to working on Black 5s. So I've got to say Eric Tracy is my personal favourite locomotive within the MYMR's fleet. So thank you Repton926MYMR for your question. My next question comes from Intercity225, and he asked me this question. What made you start YouTube, and how long did it take you to get this big? Well, it took me a good few years. I didn't actually have a channel that started in 2009 in June, but I didn't upload videos until another 2 years in 2011, and that's how it got started. When I even started filming trains before I even had YouTube in 2009, before I started. I'd done it in 2009 and I completely forgot about it, and then about 2 years later I realised I didn't have a YouTube channel, and that's how I started uploading since. It didn't really become that big until the summer of 2015, I guess. The summer of 2015, where they had a good variety of stuff going on, including Earl of Mount Edgecombe, running on the North Wales coast, and then 45407 ride on the Jacobite, and then the trip by Britannia back in May of that year. So I think I started to become that big on YouTube since 2015, I have to say on that matter. So thank you very much Intercity225 for your question. The next question comes from a friend of mine, David Hennessy, and he also asked me a question, and it's this question he asked me. At some point, are you going to cover narrow gauge material as well? COVID restrictions pending, of course. Well, it was going to be very difficult because I rarely film narrow gauge stuff, although I did do once in 2014 when I visited the Blaenau Station after I come off the charter train, the Welsh Mountaineer, which, as we all know, Blaenau is connected to Network Rail for the line to Llandudno Junction. And that was in 2014 after being on that charter, and it was the only time I've filmed on narrow gauge railways, and since then it's dried up since. Although there was a bit of it though in 2017 during that Steam in the Docks event in Liverpool at the Albert Dock. However though, there is a good chance in the future that I'll be doing narrow gauge filmings in the future, because a new Premier Inn is being built right next to the main headquarters for the Festiniog Railway. So a real good possibility I could be doing filmings on narrow gauge railways a bit more in the future. Now, of course, as always, it depends on COVID, and because we're in the third national lockdown, we don't know when it's going to be. Even though the good news, the day before this video is making, as I'm doing now, the production of the Moderna vaccine had been approved for use in the UK, the third one to be approved for use in the UK. So hopefully by Easter we can figure something out, if it all goes to plan. So away from COVID, thank you very much David Hennessy for your question. My next question comes from a friend of mine, Chris King, and he asked me, what you looking forward to most this year, or say in 2021? Well, once again, as I said in David Hennessy's question, it's all depending on COVID and depending how quickly the rollout of the vaccine can be. Hopefully by mid-February, what the Prime Minister Boris Johnson is saying. But in regards to what I'm looking forward to this year, post-pandemic, there are things to look forward to, including the rail tour I'm booked on in May on the 15th, subject if it runs, on the Jorvik trip behind Tornado, which turned out to be Tornado's final season in traffic before going in for overhaul, including the boiler swap, which the first of the boilers is due to be arriving this year, subject to change, from Meiningen in Germany. And more mainline steam action, I should say, and also the holiday at the North Yorkshire Moors, the annual in September. So that's something for me to look forward to this year in 2021. Thank you very much, Chris King, for your question. My next question comes from a young fan, James Evans, who commented on Facebook. He asked me, what's your name on YouTube? Well, when I first started YouTube, it was LFC 35028. Then it got changed to my real name, Richard Harnetty. But then just this recently, I've changed to my slogan, Harnetty Railways. So Harnetty Railways is the official name for my main YouTube channel for mainline steam and heritage rail action. So hope that cleared up for you there, Mr. Evans. And thank you for your question. My next question comes from Joseph Marison, who has given me 2 questions. And the first question he asked me is, what is your favourite railway? Well, that is a difficult question because there have been loads. I've been to a good variety of railways over the years, whether on the preserve railways or on the main line. But if it's your question regarding the mainline scene on the railway, probably my favourite mainline railway is the Settle in Carlisle. Obviously I've been there regularly, as you've seen over the years, where steam are at their finest when climbing up the long drag or the climb to A's Gill summit, and always bring me some good memories of steam over the S&C. Just like when Alberta last year, wink wink, Galatea, was in the snow, bringing back the days of the Jubilees in their swan song year when they were based at Leeds Holbeck. And also, the Settle in Carlisle is my favourite mainline railway. End of. My apologies on that one. Anyway, the second question he asked me, Joseph Marison, is your favourite Loco class? Well, that is another difficult one because there have been loads. I mean, there's been a good variety of class of engines, from tank engines right up to the heaviest express passenger trains. Within that, mixed traffic and heavy goods engines over the years. But if my favourite class of locomotives of all time, it will have to be, well, this picture will give it away, the Grizzly A4 Pacifics. Because when I was growing up from a child, the A4s were always my favourite type of engine. Of course, where it all started was with this one, 4468 Mallard, the world speed record holder of 126 miles an hour, and therefore becoming the fastest steam locomotives ever built in the UK. But then over the years, other A4s I started to grow very personally fond of, including this one here, which is number 9, John Cameron's A4, Union of South Africa. Now, Union of South Africa was the most seen A4 I've ever had ever, and I started to grow very personally fond of the engine and a soft spot for number 9. And I've had some very good memories with the A4, including runs on the main line over the S&C and the North Wales coast. And I've only had 2 rides behind the A4 on heritage railways, which was the North Yorkshire Moors and then the East Lancs Railway in Greater Manchester. But my family also has a liking of the A4s, in particular in the early days, this one here, 60007 Sir Nigel Gresley. Even at the time of this pre-nationalisation era of 4498, in the early days of preservation, when members of my household, along with my auntie and uncle, went to Carnforth in the old Steamtown days, and Sir Nigel Gresley was there on a regular basis for mainline work. So, personally for you, Joseph Marison, from your question, the A4 Pacifics are my favourite class of locomotives. Thank you, Joseph, for your 2 questions. The last YouTuber to give me questions, and he's given me about 7 questions in total, and I'm very grateful to him on that YouTuber, which is Edmund Carew, who lives in Australia. I personally thank you for that. And his first of the 7 questions he gave me is, what railway station in the UK is your favourite and why? Well, there's been a lot of stations I've been to over the years. Most of these stations I like going to is when steam are at their finest at high speeds in fine fettle, whether climbing up the steep grades or absolutely thrashing it through the stations. Or as my friends would like to call it, hellfire! I like to say. But, especially with the high speed running when there's no diesel at the back. Absolutely magnificent. But the station in particular I do like on the main line is, I've got to say, Oxenholme Lake District on the West Coast main line heading towards Glasgow. I'd say that station in particular is at its finest for mainline steam when they're working hard to grey rig and the climb to Shap Wells. But I have to say, especially that's the biggest part and the first station out of Carnforth after the steam charters legs take over from the electric hauled section, let's say the Cumbrian Mountain Express from London Euston to Carnforth, from where the steam locos will take over for the run over Shap Wells to Carlisle. And Oxenholme Lake District is the first decent station to get the steam loco at speed and climbing up the steep grades. So I had to say Oxenholme Lake District is my favourite station in the UK. Thank you, Edmund Carew, for your first question. The second question Mr. Carew has asked me said, what is the detested railway station in the UK you have had? Well, the answer to that question is, I've never been to one. I've never been to a bad station. So, because most of the stations I've been to are excellent. Alright, there are some stations where there has not got a good passenger service, and there's also a request stop within that. But to be honest with you, I've never been to a detested station. So I hope that clears up for you there, Mr. Carew. The next question he asked me, if you've not been overseas, what nation would you like to visit for rail interests and why? Well, probably I thought I was never going to be given this question, because I've never ever been abroad in my life. Apart from the only time I've been off the UK mainland is the Isle of Wight, the Isle of Man and the Isles of Scilly in Cornwall. So those are the only three areas, and also islands in the Scottish Highlands, the Isle of Mull in Scotland. Those are the only times I've been off the UK mainland. But for countries that are away from the UK, there are some good ones there. Particularly if I was going to visit the United States, I would visit Green Bay, Wisconsin for the Railroad Museum there, and also where Dwight D. Eisenhower is based, where it's been donated to the American Railroad by Dr. Beeching in the 1960s upon Dwight D. Eisenhower's withdrawal from BR service, and also to the Canadian Railroad Museum in Quebec for this loco, 4489 Dominion of Canada. That would be the only time I'll go across the pond to America and Canada to see them, and also a chance in America to see the Union Pacific big boys. Now I do like the American big boys down in the States. But countries on the other side of the world, Australia may be a good one, because I've seen trip reports of the Indian Pacific, and also to see in New South Wales Transport Museum, and also to see the famous engine in Australia, Harold Young's 38 class 3801. And also finally within Europe there will be Wolsztyn in Poland, where there's been a huge amount of steam events there, and one of the regular steam places where there was regular steam running over the years until it phased out, and it became a hotspot for enthusiasts, and also seeing steam in the snow. But probably I'll never go abroad in my time really, but the country I would love to try and do one day is probably Australia for the 38 class 3801, because I've seen a lot of YouTube history and documentaries of that locomotive. So thank you, Edmund Carew, for that question, number 5, shall I say. The next question he's asked me said, what UK station do you regard as the most attractive articulately? If that's how you not pronounce it, I do apologise on that. Well, the station has got very attractive. It's another difficult one, because I've been to a lot of stations in my time for steam, whether it's on the main line or on preserved railways. But I had to say the station I've been to that's been most attractive is probably when there's an engine shed about, where there's locomotives, and also being a picturesque area. But I have to say the station for me is, it has to be Bewdley on the Severn Valley Railway, because it's like the main junction. It's actually a main junction station for the Severn Valley, and also got interesting features such as the motive power depot, from where engines are stored there for those who are working from the Kidderminster side of the railway. So I'd say Bewdley Station is the most attractive station for me. So thank you, Mr. Carew, for that question. The penultimate question he's asked me is, do you have a model railway layout? And if so, is it Hornby, Bachmann, or some other manufacturers where products mostly feature? Well, the answer to that is, I do like a variety of manufacturers, particularly what details they do, but a vast majority of my steam locomotive collection is from Hornby and Bachmann. In particular, the Hornby versions, they do a good design of these, the A4s. They're exactly accurate to how the full-size counterpart is. Never like the Bachmann version of the A4s because of the Bugatti nose of the streamlining. It's just too wide, where the Hornby versions are a lot more easier and more accurate to the preserved ones. Don't get me wrong, Bachmann and Hornby does do good variety of locomotives, such as Bachmann do brilliant on the Hall class. They also do variety on the Jubilees and the Great Western Hall. Oh yeah, Halls I've already mentioned, sorry. So they do a good variety of Halls and Jubilees. And Hornby does great on the Royal Scots, the A4 Pacifics, and the 9... No. Hornby do a poor job on the 9F, to be honest. Bachmann do a magnificent job on the 9Fs. So as I said, regarding the model railway, it's mostly Hornby and Bachmann, the feature. However though, because of this national lockdown that England are in right now for 6 weeks, there's a good possibility I will be finally do a model railway of my own, in 00 gauge form. So thank you, Mr. Edmund Carew, for your penultimate question. The last question in the Q&A session, and the last question from Edmund Carew, and he asked me this one: what preserved railway in the UK do you have as a personal favourite, and why? Well, that is a very difficult question, because there had been loads during my time, from a very young age to where I am now. I mean, I've been to a good variety of railways in the West Country, in the South East, and then up north in Yorkshire, but I've never done a heritage railway in Scotland. So apologies to Scotland, because I've never done a Scottish heritage railway, although my dad has done on the Strathspey Railway. But I had to say, the personal railway for me that I've known the longest, it has to be the North Yorkshire Moors Railway, because it's where Harnetty Railway's filming was born back in 2010, from where I did my 21st birthday footplate experience, when I had the former resident there, the 9F 92214, although now it's at the Great Central Railway known as Leicester City, and the Essex Locomotion Society's S15825. And that's where my filmings were born, on the North Yorkshire Moors Railway. And of course I've been to the North Yorkshire Moors constant, and it's got some of the most interesting parts of the railway, such as the 1 in 49 gradient from Grumont to Goathland. And it's well known to the preservation world, because it's had its TV series, as you've seen, the Yorkshire Steam Railway, featured regularly in Heartbeat, and the first film of the Harry Potter series, particularly Goathland in particular. So to me, the North Yorkshire Moors Railway has to be my personal favourite heritage railway in the UK. But let's not forget though, that the Severn Valley Railway has a magnificent railway. The North Norfolk Railway has a fantastic line going along the Norfolk coast. The Severn Valley, as I mentioned earlier, they go along the River Severn of the Severn Valley, the Painton and Dartmouth Steam Railway, although that is not a heritage railway, which is not run by volunteers. It's done by paid employees of the Painton and Dartmouth. Yeah, so there has been a good variety of heritage railways, but as I said before, the Mymr is my personal favourite within the UK. And that's it, guys. That concludes the first and only Q&A session I will ever do here on Harnetty Railways. I would like to personally thank you to the people who have put forward their questions, which I'm extremely grateful to you all. And hopefully we can be able to start filming again after Easter, subject if this lockdown and the rollout of the vaccines are working up to the government's targets. I'm hoping it can. I'm sure everyone watching this are all the same. We all want to return to some form of normality after Easter in 2021. But for now, we just gotta wait. So thank you all very much for watching. I do have some compilation videos ready to go live in the coming months while we're still in lockdown. So if you want to know when they go up, make sure you subscribe to my channel at Harnetty Railways and turn on the notifications so you'll be notified within seconds of the video going live. Thank you all very much for watching this Q&A session, and a big thanks to all my subscribers who supported this channel for many years. I'm extremely grateful to you all. Thank you all very much for watching, take care and goodbye.